You don't have a risk problem, you have a documentation problem. And most small businesses don't realize that until something goes wrong. Because day to day, everything feels fine. The shift gets covered, the guests are taken care of, the team figures it out. So it looks like the business is running. But what's actually happening is this. The business is relying on memory, not structure. I'm Bridget C Lewis, and this is AI in HR, the Rockstar Boss 15, where we take real operational challenges inside small businesses and turn them into systems that actually work. And today we're getting into documentation, something most leaders assume is handled, but it's not actually built into how the business runs. Let me give you a real picture. You got a busy weekend at your restaurant. You're short a supervisor. So one of your experienced servers steps in to help manage the floor. They've been here for a while, so they know how things run. They've seen the issues before. So when a guest complains about their meal, they handle it. They comp the meal, they calm the situation down, and they move on. And in the moment, it feels like a win. Problem solved, guest retained, shift keeps moving. But here's the part no one stops to think about. Nothing got documented. No record of what happened, no notes of how it was handled, no visibility for leadership after the fact. So now that situation only exists in one person's memory, and nothing about that moment becomes teachable. No capture of what worked, no way to share it in training, no way for the next server to handle it the same way. And this is where things start to shift. Because next week, a similar situation will happen. Now it's a different employee on a different shift with a different manager. And now the decision changes. And that is where inconsistency starts. This is where you start to see the pattern. Nothing feels broken in the moment, but over time, the business starts operating on disconnected decisions instead of shared standards. And here's the core issue. If it's not documented, you can't prove it or repeat it, not for training, not for consistency, not when it matters most. Because when something escalates, when a complaint turns into a review, when a review turns into a claim, when a claim turns into a legal issue, now everybody's asking the same question, what happened? And the real answer is, well, it depends on who you ask. Friends, that's not a people problem. That's a system gap. This shows up in ways that are easy to miss. Managers handling situations differently because there's no documented standard. Employees making judgment calls because there's no reference point. Owners trying to piece together what happened after the fact with incomplete information. And in hospitality, this gets expensive fast. Time gets lost chasing details, decisions get questioned, guests get different experiences depending on who's on shift, and your business starts carrying risks you didn't plan for. Most small business owners don't ignore this on purpose, but they do assume if something important happens, someone will write it down. But that is not a process, that is hope, and hope is not scalable, especially when the team is growing, your shifts are busy, and your managers are making decisions in real time. So the real question becomes, how do we move from we handled it to we can prove it, repeat it, and improve it? Now, let's make this practical, because this is where we shift from talking about the problem to actually building the structure that fixes it. This is where we move into application, and we want to show you how to take something that's happening every day in your business and turn it into something your business can actually use. At this point, we're not teaching the structure because you already know it. What matters most is how we use it. So when we build this out in Word, we're not thinking, here's a template that I need to fill out. We're thinking, how do we get AI to think about this situation the way we do? And the first place that shows up is in the AI role. Now, we have not really slowed down in previous sessions to review the AI role. So let me make this clear. We assign a role to tell the AI how to think about the problem, not just what to do, but how to approach it. If you skip this part, the AI fills in the blanks on its own, and what you get is safe and general, but usually not very useful in a real life situation. When we define the role, we're not labeling the AI, but we're calibrating it. This is where we decide the lens that it should use. Is it a compliance lens, or an operations lens, or a manager coaching lens? Because the persona we choose should be driven by what we need the AI to solve for us. In this case, we're choosing an HR and operations advisor for a small hospitality business. That tells the AI this has to work in real time, this has to fit a shift, this has to balance consistency with practicality. This is not a filler, this is steering. This is where we decide how the AI will think before it ever gives us an answer. That choice shows up immediately in what comes back, because now the AI is not just writing, it is evaluating, it's prioritizing, and it's thinking through the situation. So the real question here is simple. What kind of thinking do we need right now? In this case, we need operational thinking, something that works in a live shift, not something that looks good on paper but falls apart at 7:30 on a Saturday night. So once that lens is set, now the rest of the prompt has something to anchor to. Now, as we review the company profile, note that we're not giving background, we are giving conditions. What does this business actually feel like to run? Well, it's fast-paced, guest-facing, lean staffing, and managers are making decisions in real time. Because if the AI does not understand that, it will build something that looks good on paper, but immediately fails the real-world application test. So this is not about adding more detail for the sake of adding detail. It is about adding the right context. Now, with the clear context of the company profile, we can sharpen the next part, which is the operational challenge. This is where most prompts lose their power because we tend to describe the topic instead of defining the problem. In this scenario, the topic is documentation, but the problem is this. We are handling situations and not capturing them in a consistent, usable way. And so the results we get, leadership loses visibility into what is actually happening. Follow-up becomes inconsistent. Everything depends on memory, and memory is not a system. That level of clarity is what gives the AI something real to respond to. Now that the operating environment is clear and the challenge is defined, we can ask the AI to build our desired output with confidence. This is where we decide what we actually want back. Let's not waste time asking the AI for ideas or suggestions. Let's use its full capability and ask it to build a framework, a usable template, clear categories, simple workflows, because when we ask for ideas, we're going to get a list. And lists don't change how the business runs. They just sit there. They get skimmed, they get forgotten, they're incomplete, and then you still have to turn them into something usable. And now you're doing the work and probably are asking yourself, what was the point of using AI in the first place? But when we ask for a build, we're getting structure, something that can be applied, something that can be repeated, something the business can actually run on. And yes, we still ask for clarifying questions, and we want those first, not because we are new to this, but because this is what good operators do. They slow down just enough to get it right. So the shift here is this. We are not just filling in a prompt, we are shaping how the AI understands the business. Now, as this goes into ChatGPT, we're not just looking for an answer. We are watching how it thinks. So when the output starts, the first thing we pay attention to is the clarifying questions. We're listening to and evaluating the quality of those questions. Are they just surface level, or are they actually getting to what matters? Because good questions tell us how well the AI understands where the risk is sitting. What gets documented? Who documents? How quickly does it need to happen? Where does it live? Who needs to see it later? If those types of questions show up, we're in a good place because now we know the AI is working with the situation, not just the topic. So from there, we now look at the output and we check to see if it stayed inside the assigned role. Does it sound like operations or does it drift into something generic? Because if the role worked, the output should feel grounded. It should sound like something that understands the pressure, the pace, and real-time decisions of our operations. Next, we look at how well it used the details we gave it. Did it actually build around the environment or did it ignore it? Because if those conditions have disappeared, that's a signal that the prompt might need to be tightened a little bit, not necessarily that the AI failed. And then we get to the real question. Can this be used? Not does it sound good, not is it well written, but can it actually be used? Can we see a structure, clear fields, a simple flow? Something a manager could pick up and use without stopping the shift? Because that is the standard, and this is the part that matters the most. The value here is not the document. The value is what it forces us to clarify. So let's anchor this. Documentation is not more paperwork. It is how your business remembers what happened, how it is handled, and what should happen next. It is how your managers stay aligned, and it is how your decisions stop drifting from one shift to the next. Because without it, every situation gets handled, but nothing gets carried forward. And when nothing gets carried forward, your business keeps relearning the same lessons over and over again. When this is done right, everything starts to tighten. Managers are not guessing, they're following something. Employees are not improvising, they're supported by structure. And leadership is not chasing information. They can see what is happening when it is happening. That is where consistency comes from. That is where risk reduction begins. And that is where your business begins to operate like a system instead of a collection of decisions. So here is the takeaway. What is not documented will eventually cost you, not because your team is not capable, but because your system is not carrying the work forward. Once you fix that, everything else gets easier to manage. Because, my friends, better systems build better workplaces.